Hi guys, it is an absolutely spectacularly gorgeous day here in the end times in paradise along the shores of Twin Lakes in California, above Bridgeport, California, on this beautiful, it's actually Sunday afternoon, July 9th, 2017, but since I've got a lot on my plate tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and bring you a day early economic meltdown roundup rant, which I normally bring you on Monday morning, so I will post it tomorrow. And good God, where to start in the survey around the planet about how the global industrial economy is bringing down otherwise known as the New World Order, is bringing down a planet. Now guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to bring you a climate change meltdown roundup rant, unfortunately, on Wednesday, but this story works as well for Monday as it does for Wednesday. For anybody not understanding this, let me get out my various buttons. From The Guardian: hopes of mild climate change. Hopes of mild climate change dashed by new research. And my no shit Sherlock. My no shit Sherlock button is dead. Oh well. And that's too bad because I had a lot of use for it. Anyway, gee, some more hopes dashed. All right, explain this to us, Guardian. Hopes that the world's huge carbon emissions might not drive temperatures up to dangerous levels have been dashed by new research. The work shows that temperature rises measured over recent decades do not fully reflect the global warming already in the pipeline, and the ultimate heating of our planet could be even worse than feared. Wow. How many times have we heard this over and over and over again? Worse than we feared. Jesus. The new work using both models and paleoclimate data from warming periods in the Earth's past shows the historical temperature measurements do not reveal the slow heating of the planet's oceans that take place for decades or centuries after CO2 has been added to the atmosphere. Wow, we've never heard this one before. Anyway, guys, this goes on and on and on. Gee, it might be worse than our worst case scenarios. Wow. Okay, I mentioned this story on Saturday's Clueless Moron Roundup rant, but it's sure as shit belongs in this rant. Talking about that goddamn G20 meeting where the biggest bunch of fossil fuel soaked planet eaters over there in Hamburg, Germany, talking about all sorts of shit, the ways they're going to take down a planet while trying to bullshit these fucking limp dick mainstream environmentalists. But thank you, Bloomberg, for digging a little, about 1 inch into the goddamn bullshit coming out of, well, the G19's mouth, because certainly Donald Trump isn't joining the chorus to do a goddamn thing about fossil fuels except increase the amount of them. G20's financing of fossil fuels outweighs renewables. The G20 nations provided about $72 billion annually to subsidize the fossil fuel industry, with Japan and China the top providers of fossil fuels public financing, as fossil fuels received 4 times more than clean energy and public financing from Group of 20 member countries, according to a report by environmental groups. So yeah, $72 billion a year. This is Alex Dukas, senior campaigner at Oil Change International. Quote, "Our research shows that the G20 has not put its money where its mouth is when it comes to the clean energy transition." Do you think so? Oh, God, and that goes on. And right next to that story, the no shit Sherlock story, China backs hundreds of global coal power projects. Chinese companies are constructing or planning hundreds of coal-fired power projects around the world, even as Beijing talks up its commitment to fighting climate change. Yes, this is a German environmental group, Urgewald. Urgewald estimates about 250 Chinese companies are involved in nearly half of the 1,600 new coal power projects being built or planned worldwide. There you go. The projects are in 62 countries, including 14 which today have no existing coal-fired power plants. We're looking at Pakistan, Malawi, Egypt, and Jamaica. Do you think so? This is one of these German guys. Quote, "The companies pushing forward this glut of new coal infrastructure pose a threat to us all." Do you think so? Yes. China, the world's biggest polluter, has repeatedly vowed to stay the course on reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. Yes. But that has prompted accusations that China is exporting its pollution to poorer, less developed countries. Can we all say, no shit, Sherlock? But I've got to take a break here. I'm sitting in this hot gas-sucking truck. Oh man, I need to drink some of my Arrowhead 100% Mountain Spring water so I can continue with my rant. Man, that was good. Anyway, let's see, where was I? Let's go over back to the Guardian. 1 million bottles a minute. World's plastic binge as dangerous as climate change. This is a long, involved article with videos and charts and graphs and quotes and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's just read the top few paragraphs from The Guardian. 1 million plastic bottles are bought around the world every minute, and the number will jump another 20% by 2021, creating an environmental crisis some campaigners predict will be as serious as climate change. New figures obtained by The Guardian reveal the surge in usage of plastic bottles, more than 500 billion of which will be sold every year by the end of this decade. The demand, equivalent to about 20,000 plastic bottles being bought every second, is driven by an apparently insatiable desire for bottled water and the spread of a Western urbanized on-the-go culture to China and the Asia-Pacific region. More than 480 billion plastic drinking bottles were sold last year across the world, up from about 300 billion 10 years ago. If placed end to end, they would extend more than halfway to the sun. There you go. Then it's talking about, as far as for all you recycling buffs, fewer than half of the 500 billion bottles sold last year were collected for recycling, and just 7% of those that were collected were turned into new bottles. Instead, most plastic bottles produced end up in landfills or in the ocean. No shit, Sherlock. Here is I'm sorry, I don't know who this very pro Donald Trump, pro hydrocarbons mainstream media organ this is, cheering on the booming influence of U.S. energy exports at home and abroad. There you go. We may be looking at an era where the U.S. is an increasing superpower in the world energy markets. The failing New York Times notices that the U.S. is becoming a bigger and bigger oil exporter. Oil exports grew slowly. I think this is quoting the Times, but I'm not sure here. Oil exports grew slowly through most of 2016, but this year there has been a huge surge, reaching 1.3 million barrels a day being exported out of the United States, roughly 15% of our domestic production, which even at today's depressed prices is worth more than $1.5 billion a month. Meanwhile, oil is coming out of the fields in a record gush. The Energy Department projects that domestic production next year will top 10 million barrels a day, an all-time high. Oh, and then it goes on and on to pee in their pants, celebrating the number of jobs. Well, talk about how about the number of jobs cleaning up oil spills. Right next to the story about anyone who doesn't understand that story and this story, I don't know what I can do for you. Train derailment spills 20,000 gallons of Exxon's oil in Illinois. About 20,000 gallons of crude oil belonging to ExxonMobil Corporation was spilled after a Canadian National Railway Company freight train derailed Friday in Plainfield, Illinois. Cause of the derailment was unknown. Environmental cleanup is underway at the site of the derailment, and the investigation into the cause of the accident will continue this week. Let's see, and we can all imagine how much ExxonMobil is going to be fined by the EPA under Donald Trump for that spill. Let's look at some other ways the energy regulators are cracking down on environmental criminals. Here is U.S. will not fine company for spilling radioactive sludge. The agency that regulates the U.S. nuclear industry
bullshit level DEFCON 5
will not fine a Canadian uranium mining company for twice now spilling radioactive sludge outside a Utah waste disposal facility, giving the company credit for efforts to prevent the problem from recurring.
Oh, come on now. That ain't even bullshit. That's horseshit.
I cannot make this up. The sentence did not come out of the Onion. This came from Associated Press. Saskatoon, Canada-based Cameco faced a $35,000 fine from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But Commission officials told Cameco they will not seek a fine because the company plans in the future to store the radioactive sludge in bags within its trucks. From Utah to Texas. Texas companies penalized in less than 3% of illegal air pollution cases. Oh boy, got someone pulling up beside me. Texas companies involved in illegal air pollution releases were penalized by the state in fewer than 3% of all cases. Let's see, so last year there were 3,720 unauthorized pollution events, and 3,700 of them were ignored by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
Warning, bullshit alert.
Texas is the U.S.'s leading oil and gas producer, making it a template for other states. Environmentalists have long contended that the Republican-dominated state government is too soft on an industry that is vital to the state's economy, but a major source of the state's pollution. Again, my no shit Sherlock button. From Texas to Israel, tsunami of toxic wastewater kills animals and plants in Israel's desert. Toxic wastewater that surged through a dry riverbed in southern Israel this weekend left a wake of ecological destruction more than 12 miles long. Well, this was last weekend now. The flood began last Friday when the 60-yard high wall of a reservoir at a phosphate factory collapsed, letting loose 26.5 million gallons of highly acidic wastewater into the Ashalim riverbed. That was enough fluid to fill 40 Olympic-sized pools. The toxic torrent snaked through the desert, singeing anything in its path before collecting again hours later in a pool several kilometers from the appropriately named Dead Sea. Days later, the ground is still stained a stark brown and giving off a nauseating acidic stench. Okay, let's go from Israel to the entire planet. Water everywhere, but very little to drink. Over 2.7 billion people, or 40% of the world's population, don't have enough water today. And there are dire predictions that looming water shortages and dwindling supply will lead to another war at the global scale. And while water covers 70% of the Earth's surface, precious little of it is fresh water that we consume for drinking, bathing, and irrigating crops. And according to the new estimates by the World Wildlife Fund, given the current consumption rate of fresh water, about 2/3 of the global population could face water shortages by 2025. And even as the population grows, the amount of fresh water dwindles further all the time. Can we say no shit? Sherlock, let's look at the water wars building in Tanzania. Tanzania Dam Project said to affect World Heritage Site. This is, I absolutely love this. You know, the United Nations sustainability goals cheering on hydropower to save the planet is now threatening to flood a United Nations World Heritage Site. Am I the only person seeing the sick, twisted, hilarious, ironic humor in this? The United Nations has called it one of Africa's biggest remaining wilderness areas. Now, a dispute over a planned hydropower dam in Tanzania's Selous Wildlife Reserve pits the country's pro-industry president against conservationists who say the project could cause irreparable damage to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Selous, which covers almost 20,000 square miles, has already been under pressure from poachers who have decimated its elephant population to supply the illegal ivory market. Mining concessions and other industrial projects are also a growing concern as the East African nation's campaign to boost its economy conflicts with international efforts to preserve habitats and their wildlife. No shit, Sherlock. This is Tanzania's President Magufuli. We are not going to listen to people who speak about impacts on the environment without facts on the ground. From Tanzania to Chile, Chile's salmon industry swims against current. Salmon are leaping in their millions from Chilean fish farms. Again, a huge promoter of these fish farms would be the United Nations, part of their sustainability goals to feed 10 billion people. Salmon are leaping in their millions from Chilean fish farms to U.S., Japanese, and European dining tables, but surging demand and environmental concerns have Chile wriggling on the hook. Chile earned $3.8 billion from farmed salmon last year, but campaigners warn the environment is paying a high cost. This is Lisbeth Vandermeer of the environmental group Ocean Chile. The demand for salmon is unsustainable. There is an ecological burden that this system can no longer endure. Beyond a certain quantity of salmon, it collapses. And this, what they're talking about here, among other things, is all of these clueless fucking morons eating farmed salmon, thinking they're saving wild fish. There's one problem with this. She calculates that for every 190 grams of farmed salmon produced, a kilo, which I think is 1,000 grams of local wild fish, is used to feed the farmed salmon. Is there anybody who doesn't understand this? Well, 99.9% of the clueless fucking morons eating farmed salmon do not know this and would not give a flying fuck if they were made aware. From eating salmon to eating whales. Again, I mentioned this on Saturday's Clueless Moron Roundup rant, but it bears repeating. New Japanese law, a big step toward commercial whaling, officials say. A recent law promoting whaling allows giving themselves permission to take a key step toward resuming commercial hunting of the giant mammals that are, quote, a great source of food, officials said on Thursday, as Japan continues to defy international protests to carry out what it calls scientific research whaling. But now they're just pulling the gloves off and claiming, not even they are going along with their own law. This is one of these planet eaters, one of the lawmakers behind the new bill. Quote, whales are a great source of food, and my position is that we should harness this. Okay, well, we've already been over in Africa, but let's go back to the G20, and probably they spent about 30 minutes talking about Africa. I don't know if one country from Africa shows up in the G20. I'd be surprised. G20 launches plan to fight poverty in Africa.
Bullshit detected. Take precaution.
G20 nations launched an unprecedented initiative Saturday at the group summit in Germany to fight poverty in Africa.
Bullshit level. DEFCON 5.
But critics called the plan half-hearted. Under German Chancellor Angela Merkel's investment compacts, an initial 7 African countries would pledge reforms.
Oh, come on now. That ain't even bullshit. That's horseshit.
And receive technical support in order to attract new private investment. Yes. Let's see. Then they're talking about all the 100,000 people, most of them sub-Saharan Africans, that have made the dangerous journey to Europe across the Mediterranean in rickety boats this year, as the migration crisis shows no sign of abating. And then they sit here and diagnose why 100,000 sub-Saharan Africans are getting their black asses to Honkyville, and you never see the word overpopulation in this story. But even Oxfam judged that the plan, quote, rests on the dangerously naive assumption that boosting private investment will automatically help the poorest in the continent. If left unchecked, the compact might simply line the pockets of wealthy foreign investors.
Warning, bullshit alert.
And I can see I'm already up to 30 minutes, and good God, I could easily go on another 30 minutes. So what did Donald Trump have to say about all this poverty in Africa? This is the same Donald Trump I was cheering on for claiming, since he's been elected, that he is going to end foreign aid to Africa.
That was bullshit.
As we see at G20 Summit, Trump pledges $639 million of American taxpayers' money in aid to 4 countries. U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday promised $639 million in American taxpayer money to feed people left starving because of drought and conflict in Somalia, South Sudan, Nigeria, and Yemen. And of course, you will not find the word overpopulation anywhere in that story. Here's a story from Nigeria. Peace at risk in Nigeria's oil heartlands as locals' patience wears thin. Yes, anybody who thinks there is peace in Nigeria's oil heartlands, pull your head out of your ass. This is a real interesting, very subtle story that requires critical thinking, discernment, and nuance. So I don't know what it's doing in the mainstream media. As we see this story, EU-Norway crab row could fuel oil tensions in Arctic. I could do an entire rant on this story. On the face of it, a relentless battle between the European Union and Norway in a remote part of the Arctic is about snow crabs.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
But the real fight may go beyond who gets to catch the modest crustaceans. What is really at stake is oil, some experts say, and a coming race for the commodity, of which there is a lot in the polar region. And so this breaks us all down about the snow crab wars in up there in the Arctic. And yeah, snow crab wars my ass. This is a test case for the oil wars. I got a little bit of chuckle out of this story, considering my my history here on Humpty Dumpty Tribe about that oil train, that oil truck wreck over there in Pakistan, which I guess is now over 200 people dead in that oil truck explosion. Pakistan orders Shell to pay $2.4 million for tanker blast. And I would show you a picture of the tanker blast being plastered. This is Reuters News, being plastered all over the mainstream media. But if I did, I would be hit by a content violation by the YouTube community. So you'll just have to go on to YouTube and look at the other 50 YouTubes of what that blast looked like in Pakistan. Okay, 3 more real quick. Arkansas to ban dicamba weed killer after drift complaints. Arkansas will temporarily ban the use and sale of Monsanto weed killer dicamba after a rise in complaints that the agricultural chemical is drifting into neighboring fields and killing crops. This is an emergency 120-day ban till they figure this out. Monsanto just kind of letting this roll off. The ban will not have a material impact on Monsanto's earnings. And Monsanto has invested more than $1 billion in a new dicamba facility to supply demand it expects will blossom. Monsanto's dicamba formula is approved for use in 33 other states. 20 million acres expected to be sprayed with this shit next year, and they're hoping 55 million acres of our food supply to be hosed down by dicamba by 2019. And there's 2 more real quick. Here is New York had big sewage spill, did not report it on time. New York's capital city, Albany, spilled 4 million gallons of sewage into the Hudson River in the last 2 weeks and did not meet state requirements for reporting the problem. No shit, Sherlock. But we're going to end up right down the street in good old Los Angeles, California. Power restored after huge Los Angeles outage. Electricity has been restored to tens of thousands of customers who lost service when a power station in suburban LA caught fire amid a blistering heat wave. At its height, the outage Saturday evening affected 140,000 customers. Cooling centers were opened for residents left without air conditioning. As I heard from Groot letting me know that where I was just staying down in LA, it was 112 degrees where I was there. 112 degrees, the hottest day ever recorded in Woodland Hills, California. I am very happy to be along the shores of Twin Lakes, where it's about 82 degrees here on Sunday afternoon. And just to let you know, I don't know what it's going to look like on Humpty Dumpty Tribe the next week or so, because I am packing up my gas-sucking truck at the crack of dawn, heading into the big city of San Francisco for one night tomorrow, and then I'm going to turn right back around and grab a canoe and head off on a canoe for several days. So guys, I don't know when you will hear from me again, because I'm going to get out there and I am going to enjoy paradise in the end times while I still can, and suggest you do the same. Bye guys.